How long would it take for that to melt? So often when it comes to things like drone hysteria and stuff like that, in my view, it always comes down to just education. If someone's ignorant about a certain topic, they will say it's completely dangerous and all that, or at the same time, many people would say in terms of regulations and stuff, it's just based on extremely old way of thinking. Like here before the interim rules, it was so generic and broad. You have to stay away like from all the people, the buildings, the animals and so forth. Like fortunately that was changed. And as you guys know, I recently uploaded a separate video of that ego video, which to me it was basically fascinating to see. Like I've never seen anything like that before. A lot of you say you've never seen like that before. So I thought in many ways it'd be a great way to actually show people too, like, hey, you can use the drones in a really safe way that doesn't disturb what the animals naturally do. But funny enough, I got kind of a, I guess you could say, negative comments about that. And I guess the twist of it is, I would expect normally, like say, an activist or something like that, like a very environmental person, to go off in that way, but not from an actual drone flyer. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. So when it comes to things like internet text, obviously you can't hear things like tone of voice and all that, so it's kind of hard to tell what the real intent is behind the message, but I'm just gonna go by facts and so forth and what I understand about this person and in general with what you commented, with what you stated here. So the comment here says, Alan, it's a very cool video and I certainly watched the whole thing. However, in the US, this would be considered harassment and the federal government even provides awards for tips on stuff like this. I'm not from the US, of course, so someone else could chime in who actually lives there. But to say that is harassment, like to my mind, it's really filming the eagles doing their natural thing, not being bothered. They're still hunting for their fish and all that. In my opinion, harassment would be like that news that I saw here where there was these FPV flyers. They basically flew it right into like the Canadian geese and so forth, basically chasing after it. Like that, in my opinion, is harassment. But for this, really? But for the benefit of the doubt, you could be just saying, hey, that's how it is over there and that's how people interpret it. That's not how you see it. I mean, that's how I could view this message in general. But then you make a comment here saying, I have to say that I'm pretty disappointed that you continue to keep the drone around those eagles, so it wasn't totally, quote, accidentally that you encountered the landing on the water. Now with that comment, it made me a little suspicious and weary as to why you're trying to be so technical about that, like being negative about the video. Because generally speaking, for those who've seen the vlog on the day it happened, I was just wondering all of a sudden like, hey, what's going on? I film the ducks and so forth, the scenery all the time. Why are they getting scared all of a sudden? Then I realized, oh, there's this eagle flying around here, that's why. And you can even see my reaction, even though I could see the drone, the eagles and all that. I was wondering, what are they doing? I was like, is it taking a bath or something? My reaction was even something along the lines of, that water is like so cold, what's it doing? I mean, for all I knew, when it crashed into the water, I was like, what happened? Did it crash? Does it need help? Like, I don't know. It wasn't actually until I got home and did the video editing I realized, oh, it was actually hunting for something. So again, it makes me wonder, why try to be so negative about that, especially in that technical sense, so to speak. Otherwise, by your definition, no one ever captures anything by accident. As long as they stop and they film it, it's never an accident. I mean, just personally speaking, not an accident would be something that's extremely planned. Like say, if it was that squirrel and crow fighting, it would be me intentionally making one of them mad or something like that to get them to attack each other. That would be non-accidental. And then reading this part kind of made me curious in terms of trying to see what kind of lens you're trying to view like the world in, or just a perspective. Because you said here, given how much you complain about Canadian regulation, I don't think this video will help your argument much. If I were you, I would delete it. That being said, let us know when they knock on your door. Generally speaking, with things like animals, the whole point is, in my opinion, it's so overblown where people say if you fly like a drone, for example, near an animal, it'll give them a heart attack. And so many people use that as a reason to essentially ground everybody. Like, you shouldn't be able to fly anything at all just because of that. And as I demonstrated so many times, like so much of my captures, like the ducks, the geese, and so forth, if they're in an environment where they know it's not a threat, then they're okay with it. That's my whole point. I mean, even with this eagle example, like you call that quote harassment, did it seem like they cared overall? Did they not go about with their business still in terms of catching that fish or whatever still? Otherwise, to me, the term harassment in this case would be kind of like someone just walking by another and saying hello and then seeing someone else saying, that's harassment. Like maybe that's the way in some places in the world, but generally speaking, I don't see how that is harassment in general. Because it makes me think of the topic, which I don't talk much about, but I see a lot, and many times it's actually drone flyers themselves that, in my opinion, make the hobby so fearful for other people because of comments like this. If you guys remember, just in terms of things like animals and drones, just recently they had those articles I talked about where they said with bears, they've been flying it around them to realize that, hey, they get used to it. Like it says here, animals may get used to drones. And keep in mind, this is the most modern day one. It says, a new study shows that over time, bears get used to drones. Previous work indicated that animals behave fearfully or show a stress response near drone flights. Using heart monitors to gauge stress, however, researchers here found that bears habituated to drones over 3 to 4 weeks period and remain habituated. I even said before, even I could have told you that just based on experience. Like animals, people, they're all the same thing. When you get used to something, they won't fear it as long as they know it's not a threat. And for the topic of quote harassment, capturing things by accident, or potentially benefiting people if you're doing it safely and all that, it reminds me of the article that you guys showed me when I was debating with that helicopter guy. I actually use this as my example. It says here, narwhal hunting with their tusk caught on video for the first time. So essentially with this accidental drone capture, they found out what they were using their tusk and stuff for. And because of the drone, they basically were able to discover this. Because this example is more interesting because it's basically something on a bigger scale in terms of a very first scene in the world, so to speak. I mean, breaking it down with the points you brought up, technically you should consider this harassment too. Just the fact that someone was filming that animal doing its natural thing in life, and the fact that I guess you could say it followed it or whatever, you should consider this harassment too, correct? And the other point is basically about that in terms of capturing stuff and showing it to people. In my opinion, it's really educational. It's fascinating to see. It can benefit the world in various ways. Because that's just my example, like when I was debating with that other guy, for some reason, him flying a helicopter in the air is justifiable to fly something in the air because maybe he views his work or something like that as more valuable. But whereas with things like capturing things like here, nature, study, and so forth, wouldn't you consider that just as valuable as well? I mean, if someone's doing it perfectly safe as well, I would see that as a benefit too, for people being able to capture videos in a safe way. Who knows, maybe in that eagle thing, there was something that's different that no one's ever seen before. Shouldn't people be able to capture stuff like that if they're doing it perfectly safe and all that? Now for yourself, I'm not gonna say you're a quote hater because just from my understanding, I know you own drones and stuff like that, but it is extremely contradicting for you to, in a sense, say this is harassing and that I should delete it and so forth. Because if I'm not mistaken, you are someone that commented where you thought it was so silly as you were presented with a situation where there was like search and rescue crews or something like that in a park, and people were essentially drone policing you on why you can't fly your drone to help in the search potentially, even though you're fully licensed and all that. So to me, that's a little weird and odd where you're criticizing people for not letting you fly the drone in a perfectly safe way that could help people. I could argue in this case, in terms of what I'm doing, like there, I captured something in a perfectly safe way and all that. It could be educational. Is that not a value in the world too? Should I not be able to do that? Wouldn't you agree that it's a lot of the negative attention that creates this hysteria to get people to stop you from flying it? Whether it be, oh, this thing is going to spy on me. These things kill people, destroy airplanes, harass animals. With all that negativity, don't you need the positive stuff to counteract that? So the only real way to counteract that extreme negativity, that extreme negative news, is to have that extreme positive stuff as well. Like in this case, unless again, your definition of harassment is like how I was filming it there, in my opinion, you could use that as an example to say, no, we can use it as a way to capture great scenery and so forth, learn something different, maybe it's educational. At the same time, here's the proof, people can fly it responsibly. For an actual drone flyer, in my opinion, to leave that kind of comment, it's unfortunate, but it's almost like you're feeding into the negativity, like the frenzy. You could have used that, in my opinion, as a really positive way, but instead you took the negative route of it, which makes me wonder why. This might not be exactly true for you, but what it makes me think of is many times how, like with the regulations and stuff that were put in place here, a lot of people, when they see something, they'll automatically say, because you did this, that's the reason why we have drone laws like this. Like, let's just say with the animals, let's just say we had that still with the stipulation, which it was taken out. It's almost like a person like yourself, a drone flyer, seeing me capture animals, even though I felt it was perfectly safe and everything like that, you're gonna look at that video and take the negative and say, because of videos like that, that's why we have laws stopping people from flying drones from animals. Because that is so flawed, in my opinion. It would be kind of like saying in some countries, like say China, it's illegal for you to access things like what? Google and stuff like that. Like they actually block you out from doing that. But if you see someone using, like say, I don't know, YouTube or Google there, and for someone to come out and say, because you're using that there, that's why we have laws. Why like the government or whatever stops you from accessing those sites. In my mind, it's like, no, that's not the reason why they block you from using like those American company sites and stuff like that. Like there, it's one thing to say, okay, that's how it's written here and so forth, but it's another to imply like to that person, man, that's the reason why we need regulations like that. I mean, think about it if it makes sense, like first of all. Actually, funny enough, I just saw this comment that you specifically posted right now, just this minute, which kind of proves my point in terms of maybe you should sit there and realize what you put out there was basically flawed, like it's negative in a way if you're trying to promote the good of it. It's like just from a different perspective. And you said here, sorry Alan, unless I misspelled some words, my comment is not flawed, but rather factual. Just being considerate of your well-being, so no need to get defensive. I'll just unsubscribe. Denial is no defense. And with that, I'll say your comment is once again flawed, because in terms of denial and so forth, isn't it the other way around? I published something that I thought benefited people. You wrote a comment which in a sense you felt it would do the opposite. So I'm replying to you on my reason, but now instead of even like trying to read it, sit there and understand for yourself, did I do something wrong? You basically ran away. Wouldn't that be denial on your end? And on an interesting note, the comment about how you're just looking out for my well-being per se, like you just don't want to see me get in trouble or flamed by people, kind of like, I guess, for me, I would expect some people, like, anyone ever remember that case with a selfie monkey, like making such a big deal about this? Like, I expect things like that. I mean, that's just part of the whole process, so to speak. When you put yourself out there giving an opinion, you're going to expect stuff like that. But in terms of things like well-being, I mean, funny enough, something for you to consider is I'm actually looking out for your well-being as well. Because in terms of things like flying drones and stuff like that, I know because I do it publicly and so forth, people are gonna have like, say, a sharper eye on me. If someone wants to really come after me because they hate drones and stuff like that, I'm a bigger target. So everything that I do, that I put out there, I'm trying to show people in general, people do it safely, nothing wrong. It could be fantastic, it could be educational. Because if anything, in terms of hurting, I mean, I'm not trying to be harsh, but I would assume most drone flyers would support like that stuff that I do that's perfectly safe and all that. Because for the most part, people won't be vocal about it or anything like that because they're afraid of being attacked and all that.
When did we get to this call that we found?
Last night. Yeah. Hey, look, they found it. At first when I went there, the guy was just stuttering a bit. He's like, oh, where is it? Where is it? Like he was looking around, going to the different rooms and asking me again, like, when did they phone you and tell you that they found it? And eventually they did. I was like, geez, that's so disorganized there, huh? And with the weight of this thing, I was like, what do you put in here? A pair of nunchucks or something? I know you like martial art movies, but yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I know you said it was a Joby and stuff like that. I'll probably use it to record like when I do the wooden dummy and stuff like that, since you said you enjoyed that. Just trying to think if I can use it in other ways too, just to get some different views and perspectives with these new tools. Thanks again. Alright, see you guys later.